Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this because what we're looking at today absolutely is not your standard gaming review. It's a high stakes thought experiment about a civilizational inflection point that could, literally, drop tomorrow. We're taking data and analysis from a fascinating source document to unpack exactly what happens to our society when the ultimate immersive technology collides with human nature.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The ultimate thought experiment. 2. Hijacking the human brain. 3. Economic and labor collapse. 4. A legal and regulatory crisis. 5. The single title monopoly. 6. 5 unanswered questions.
Section 1, the ultimate thought experiment. Okay, so we all know Grand Theft Auto 6 is slated for release soon, but I want you to skip a decade ahead with me. What if a perfect, flawless VR headset dropped tomorrow and it only had one game, GTA 7? Now, you might be wondering, why is this specific combination so catastrophic? Well, it's because you're pairing the ultimate frictionless technology with a franchise that is explicitly designed around consequence-free transgression. To put this into perspective, we're talking about a full-dive neural interface. Basically, a system that neurologically hijacks every single sensory pathway. Vision, touch, smell, taste, movement, all while your physical body remains completely inert on the couch. The inputs are totally indistinguishable from reality. The source notes that historically, the iPhone took about 3 years to march to 100 million users. But this device, since it requires zero physical skill and offers instant, highest resolution gratification, it would achieve mass adoption basically overnight.
Section 2. Hijacking the human brain.
The source analysis provides this absolutely terrifying insight. The brain cannot distinguish it from reality because the brain is reality construction hardware. Think about that for a second. The brain relies on predictive processing. It models the world based on sensory inputs. So if those inputs perfectly mimic reality, your brain genuinely treats it as physical reality. We're talking about actual neuroplastic changes, synaptic remodeling, and real physiological responses. Your stress hormones and immune markers would react to virtual threats and rewards as if they were entirely 100% real. Contrast this with traditional gaming. On 2D screens, longitudinal studies show this really slow behavioral desensitization to violence or antisocial behavior, but in a full-fidelity VR sandbox, where you feel genuine pain, pleasure, and fear, that timeline is hyper-compressed. We're talking about clinically measurable PTSD, genuine grief, and intense addiction forming within weeks of launch. The neurological habituation means physical reality will actually start to feel less real, not the other way around. It's wild.
Section 3. Economic and labor collapse.
So, shifting from the individual's psychological crisis, let's look at the catastrophic shockwaves hitting the global economy. The speed of this disruption is terrifying. Within weeks post-launch, that clinical psychological toll becomes totally apparent. Within months, labor markets in physically demanding or cognitively routine sectors start heavily hemorrhaging workers. Why? People just stop showing up. By the first quarter, we'd see a measurable and alarming collapse in GDP productivity. Unlike the slow, multi-decade decay we see in sci-fi like Ready Player One, this device arrives into a functioning economy and literally guts it almost overnight. You might ask, why does the workforce vanish so quickly? Well, time dilation. The flow state means users emerge having lost hours while feeling like only minutes have passed, completely destroying productivity and circadian rhythms. Then you have the medical emergencies: muscle atrophy, severe dehydration, deep vein thrombosis from just sitting there immersed. And honestly, perhaps most terrifying for society, hardware dependency. A single private corporation literally controls the off switch to your perceived reality. Imagine a server patch just turning off your entire world. Section 4. A legal and regulatory crisis. The source explicitly warns us that our regulatory environment is structurally unprepared for a device that directly modifies brain function. Existing frameworks capture only tiny fragments of this technology. One agency looks at it as a medical device, another as media content, and someone else handles consumer safety. This kind of jurisdictional ambiguity essentially guarantees complete structural failure from day one. The legal vacuums created here are just immense, uncharted territory. For example, in-game sexual assault and physical harm. Does existing law even cover it if it physically feels real? What about addiction? Current classifications were built for 2D screens, not full sensory replacement. The source projects an 18 to 36-month delay in meaningful oversight because global agencies will just be arguing over jurisdiction. And by the time they figure it out, the install base will be so incredibly massive that regulating it becomes politically impossible. the user base essentially becomes untouchable.
Section 5. The single title monopoly. Actually, this is maybe the starkest comparison in the entire source document. The closest historical parallel is not a technology launch, it's a religion. I mean, wow, think about that. One device, one game, one studio. Every human who wants access to the most compelling experience ever created has to pass through a single private commercial choke point. Consider the unprecedented tools of influence this creates. A private company would have complete control over the experiential content of humanity. You'd see subscription models just to access reality, invasive in-world advertising right in front of your eyes, and totally unregulated behavioral nudging. The leverage that the creators would hold over human behavior would completely eclipse the power of any government, advertiser, or employer in the history of modern society. Section 6. 5 unanswered questions. The main takeaway here is that this isn't just a tech release, it's a simultaneous neurological, economic, and legal crisis, which leaves us with 5 devastating dilemmas to think about. Question 1. If the headset perfectly simulates pain, who decides whether non-playable characters can inflict it on you? And if they do, what is that decision legally and ethically, if not the literal definition of assault? Question 2. At what exact point does a government step in and declare a full-fidelity VR environment a public health emergency? And more importantly, how could any regulatory body realistically enforce a crackdown when the tech is already sitting right there in 50 million homes? Question 3. Does the manufacturer hold any liability for neurological changes? I mean, if the device predictably causes anxiety disorders, dissociation, and genuine addiction by design, simply by functioning exactly as advertised, who pays for that societal fallout? Question 4. If 2 people meet up in this simulation and one is harmed by the other exclusively within the headset, has a crime actually occurred in any existing geographical or physical jurisdiction? We're potentially looking at the total collapse of physical law here. And finally, question 5. What happens to the very concept of informed consent when a person can no longer reliably distinguish their memories of physical, real-world experiences from their memories of simulated ones? It's a deeply chilling existential paradox. It really asks us to consider not just the future of entertainment, but the actual future of human memory and reality itself. So, are we ready for this?